listening to me. Well, suppose no time like the present to find something new to discipline yourself. It is 8:14 in the morning. No, that's a vicious lie. I got my alarm is at 8:14. Here I am, talking to you guys. Anyone that's out there listening. We're gonna get into the book called The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries. Discipline. You do it not because you wanna. Well, how the fuck would you know what you want to do? There's not really too many ways to understand that. It's more a self-fulfilling prophecy. What you want to do? What do you want? Do you know what you want? How would you know if you know what you want? You know? Suppose that's what freaks lefties out, is because they don't know what they want. They are pissed off that other people tell them what they want them to be. So, like children, they react in the worst kind of way, which is completely to go in the opposite direction, instead of understanding what exactly it is. Alright, are we set up or what? Just had to move my mic, that's all. Is that loud? Boom, 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 boom. So I know what I want. Hail for people who know what they want. I suppose what you want is something that you would risk life and limb to do. That's what you want. Otherwise, it's like fucking choosing what you want to eat for supper. Alright. So we're at section 1. Page 1. On this adventure. You coming along with me? So we're gonna start here. Section 1, the living fairy faith. Okay? Section 1, the living fairy faith. Chapter 1, environment. In the beauty of the world lies the ultimate redemption of our mortality. When we shall become at one with nature in a sense profounder than even then the poetic imaginings of most of us, we shall understand what now we fail to discern. Physical interpretation. The mysticism of Erin and Amorica in Ireland and Scotland, in the Isle of Man, in Wales, in Cornwall, and in Brittany. Oh, did I say physical? No. Psychical. Psychical interpretation. Yeah. That quote, by the way, was from Fiona MacLeod. I'm gonna turn this fucking phone off. Isn't that a novel idea? Can't believe how drawn into their phones people are. Well, how would I know anyway? I imagine people are more drawn into their phones more than ever before. Even worse than TV. It's crazy. So, do me a favor. Shut your phones off. At least an hour every morning. At least. And try to discover what you want. Okay. Enough of that. As a preliminary to our study, it is important, as we shall see later, to give some attention to the influences and purely natural environment under which the fairy faith has grown up. And in doing so, it'll be apparent to what extent there is truth in the naturalistic theory. Though from our first interpretation of environment is fundamentally psychical. In this first chapter, then, insofar as they can be recorded, we shall record a few impressions which will, in a way, serve as introductory to the more definite and detailed consideration of the fairy faith itself. Ireland and Brittany, the two extremes of the modern Celtic world, are for most of us important points from which to take our initial bearings. Both washed by the waters of the ocean of Atlantis, the one an island, the other a peninsula. They have best preserved their old racial life in its simplicity and beauty, with its high ideals, its mystical traditions, and its strong spirituality. And, curious though the statement may appear to some, this preservation of older manners and traditions does not seem to be due so much to the geographical isolation as to the subtle forces so strange and mysterious that to know them they must be felt, and their nature can only be suggested, for it cannot be described. Over Erin and Emorica, as over Egypt, there hovers a halo of romance, of strangeness, of mysticism, real and positive, and, if we mistake not the language of others, these phrases of ours but echo opinions common to many Celts native to the two countries, they who have the first right to testify. And not only are the poets and seers among them, but men of the practical world as well, and men of high rank and scholarship, and literature and art and even science. If anyone would know Ireland, well, here we go. We're an island. I come to Ireland now. If anyone would know Ireland and test these influences which have been so fundamental in giving to the fairy faith of the past something more than mere beauty of romance and attractive form, and something which even today, as in the heroic ages, is ever living and ever present in the centers where men of the second sight say that they see fairies in that strange state of subjectivity which the peasant calls fairyland. Let him stand on the hill of terror silently and alone at sunset, in the noonday, in the midst of a dark day. Let them likewise silently and alone follow the course of Boyne. Oh my God. That phone is still on. Sorry. He showed him his boss. Anyway. Let him stand on the hill of Terra, silently and alone at sunset, in the noonday, in the midst of a dark day. Let him likewise, silently and alone, follow the course of the Boyne. Let him enter the silence of New Grange and of Dowth. Let him muse over the hieroglyphics of the Low Crew. Let him feel the mystic beauty of Killarney, the peacefulness of Glendalough, of Monasterbois, of Clonmacnoise, and the isolation of Ranmore. Let him dare to enter the rings of fairies to tempt the good folk and their wraths and forts. Let him rest in the ancient cairn above the mountain palace of Finvara and look out across the battlefields of Moitura. Let him wander amid the fairy dells of gentle Connemara. Let him behold the Irish Sea from the heights of Howth, as Fionn Mac Comhail used to do. Let him listen to the ocean winds amid Dun Angus, and let him view the stronghold of Cohulang and the Red Branch Knights. Let him linger beside that mysterious lake, which lies embosomed between two prehistoric cairns on the summit of enchanted Silev Guyan, where yet dwells invisible the mountain's guardian, a fairy woman. Let him then try to interpret the mysticism of an ancient Irish myth in order to understand why men had been told that in the plain beneath this magic mountain of Ireland, mighty warfare was once waged on account of a bull by the hosts of Queen Maeve against those of Cuchulainn, the hero of Ulster. Let him be lost in the midst of, at the top of Ben Bulben. Let him know the haunts of fairy kings and queens of Roscommon. Let him follow in the footsteps of Patrick and Brigitte and Columba. When there are dark days and stormy nights, let him sit beside blazing fire, fragrant peat, in the peasant's straw-thatched cottage, listening to tales of Ireland's golden age, tales of gods, of heroes, of ghosts, and of fairy folk. If he will do these things, he will know Ireland, and why its people believe in fairies. As yet, little has been said concerning the effects of clouds, of natural scenery, of weird and sudden transformations in earth and sky and air, which play their part in shaping the complete fairy faith of the Irish. But what we are about to say concerning Scotland will suggest the same things for Ireland, because the nature of the landscape and the atmosphere changes are much the same in the two countries, both inland on their rock-bound and storm-swept shores. Storm-swept shores. Well now, and in Scotland, in the moorlands of the Trossachs and Aberfoyle, a region made famous by Scott's Rob Roy, I have seen atmospheric changes so sudden and so contrasted as to appear marvelous. What shifting of vapors and clouds, what flashes of bright sun gleams, and then twilight at midday across the landscape. Shadows of black dense fog banks rushed like shadows of flocks of great birds which darken all the earth. palpitating fog banks wrap themselves around mountain tops and then come down like living things to move across the valleys, sometimes only a few yards above the traveler's head. And in that country live terrible water kelpies. When black clouds discharge their watery burden in its wind-driven vertical water sheets, through which the world appears as though an ice-filmed window pane. Perhaps in a single day there may be the bluest of heavens and the clearest air, the densest clouds and the darkest shadow. In the calm of the morning and the wind of the tempest. At night in Aberfoyle, which, after such a day, I witnessed a clear sunset and a fair evening sky. In the morning, when I arose, the lowlands along the river were inundated, and 1,000 cascades, large and small, were leaping down the mountain highlands, and rain was falling in heavy masses. Within an hour afterwards, as I traveled towards Stirling, the rain and wind had ceased, and there settled down over all the land cloud masses so inky black they seemed like the fancies of some horrible dream. Then, like massed armies, they began to move to their mountain strongholds, and stood there, while from the east came perfect weather and a flood of brilliant sunshine. And in the highlands from Stirling to Inverness, what magic, what changing colors and shadows there were on the age-worn, treeless hills, and in the valleys with their clear, pure streams receiving tribute from unnumbered little rills and springs, some dropping water drop by drop, as though it were fairy distilled. And everywhere the heather giving to the mountain landscape a hue of rich purplish brown, and to the air an odor of aromatic fragrance. Unto the northwest, beyond Inverness, there is the same kind of treeless highland country. Then after a few hours of travel, one looks out across the water from Kyle and beholds Skye, where Cuchulainn is by some believed to have passed his young manhood learning feats of arms from fairy women. Skye, dark, mountainous, majestic, with its waterfalls turning to white spray as they tumble from the cliff to cliff into the sound from out the clouds that hide their mountain summit sources. In the outer Hebrides, as in the Animal Islands off West Ireland, influences are at work on the Celtic imagination, quite different from those in Skye and its neighboring islands. Mountainous billows which have traveled from afar out of the mysterious watery waste find their first impediment on the west of these isolated Hebridean Isles, and they fling themselves like mad things in full fury against the wild rocky islets fringing the coast. Why do they call them the Hebrides? Anybody know that? It's a peculiar word, isn't it? Outer Hebrides. Somebody do the etymology on that word. It's suspicious to me. It triggers me. Anyway. White sprays flashes in unearthly forms over the highest cliff, and the unrestrained hurricane whirls it far inland. Ocean's eternally murmuring sounds set up a responsive vibration in the soul of the peasant, as he in solitude drives home his flocks amid the weird gloaming at the end of a December day. And later, when he sits brooding in his humble cottage at night, in the fitful flickering of a peat fire, he has a majestic consciousness that deep down in his being there is a more divine music compared with which that of external nature is but a symbol and an echo. And as he stirs the glowing peat embers, phantoms from an irretrievable past seem to be sitting with him on the edge of the half-circle of dying light. Maybe there are skin-clad huntsmen of the sea and land with spears and knives of bone and flint and shaggy sleeping dogs for fearless sea rovers resting wearily on shields of brilliant bronze, or maybe Celtic warriors, fierce and bold. And then he understands that his past and his present are one. Commonly there is the thickest day darkness when the driving storms come in from the Atlantic, or when dense fog covers sea and land. And again, there are melancholy sea winds roaming across from shore to shore, bending the bushes of a purple heather. At other times there is a sparkle of the brightest sunshine on the ocean waves, a fierceness foreign to the more peaceful islands. And then a dead silence prevails at sunrise and at sunset if one be on the mountains, or if on the shore. No sound is heard save the rhythmical beat of the waves, and now and then the hoarse cry of a seabird. All these contrasted conditions may be seen on one day, or each may endure for a day. And the dark days last nearly all the winter. And then it is during the long winter that the crofters and fisherfolk congregate night after night in a different neighbor's house to tell about fairies and ghosts, and to repeat all those old legends so dear to the heart of the Celt. Perhaps everyone present has heard the same story or legend 100 times, yet it is always listened to and told as though it were the latest bulletin of some great world-stirring event. Over those little islands, so far away to the north, out on the edge of the world, in wintertime, darkness settles down at 4 o'clock, or even earlier, and the islanders hurry through with their dinner of fish and oat bread, so as not to miss the hearing of the first story. When the company has gathered from far and near, pipes are refilled and lit, and the peat is heaped up, for the storytelling is not likely to end before midnight. The house is roomy and clean, if homely, with its bright peat fire in the middle of the floor. There are many present, men, women, boys and girls. All the women are seated, and most of the men. Girls are crouched between the knees of fathers or brothers or friends, while boys are perched wherever, boy-like, they can climb. The houseman is twisting twigs of heather into ropes to hold down thatch. A neighbor crofter is twinning quicken root into cords to tie cows, while another is plaiting bent grass into baskets to hold meal. The housewife spinning, a daughter is carding, another daughter is teasing, while a third daughter, supposed to be working, is away in the background, conversing in low whispers with the son of a neighboring crofter. Neighbor wives and neighbor daughters are knitting, sewing, or embroidering. Then, when the bad weather of fishing has been fully discussed by the men, and the latest gossip by the women, and the foolish talk of the youths and maidens of the corners is finished, the one who occupies the chair of honor in the midst of the Cielda has a caption here. The Cielda of the Western Hebrides corresponds with the Ville of Lower Brittany, and a similar storytelling festivals which formerly flourished among all the Celtic peoples. Cielda is a literary entertainment where stories and tales, poems, ballads are rehearsed and recited, and songs are sung. Conundrums are put, proverbs are quoted, and many other literary matters are related and discussed. It's from Alexander Carmichael. Carmina Gaedelicia. Is that the old word for Gael? Gaelic? The one whom occupies the chair of honor in the midst of the Cielda looks around to be sure that everybody is comfortable and ready. And as his first story begins, even the babes by instinct crease their nose and crying, and young and old bend forward eagerly to hear every word. It does not matter if some of the boys and the girls do topple over asleep, or even some of the older folk as the hour gets late. The tales meet no interruption in their even, unbroken flow, and here we have the most Celtic and the most natural environments which the fairy faith enjoys in Scotland. There are still the southern highlands in the country around Oban, and the islands near them. And of all these isles, none is so picturesque in history as the one Columba loved so well. Though Iona enjoys less of the wildness of the Hebrides further west, it has their own storm winds and fogs and dark days, and their strangeness of isolation. On it, as Adamnan tells us, the holy man fought with black demons who came to invade his monastery, and saw angelic hosts, and when the angels took his soul at midnight in that little chapel by the seashore, there was a mystic light which illuminated all the altar with the brightest sunshine. But nowadays, where the saint saw demons and angels, the islanders see ghosts and good people. And when one of these islanders is taken in death, it is not by angels, it is by fairies. Sounds like a little cultural appropriation, no? So, we come to the Isle of Man. In the midst of the Irish Sea, almost equidistant from Ireland, Scotland and Wales, concentrating it in itself the psychical and magnetic influences from these three Celtic islands, and from the Celto-Saxon England too, lies the beautiful kingdom of the great Tuatha de Danann God, Manannan MacLear, or his loyal Manx subjects prefer to call him, Menanen beg Macilier. In no other land of the Celt does nature show so many moods and contrasts, such perfect repose at one time, and at another time the mightiness of its unloosed powers. When the baffled sea throws itself angrily against a rock-bound coast, as wild and almost as weather-worn as the western coast of Ireland and the Hebrides. But it is nature's calmer moods which have greater effect upon the Manx people. On the summit of his ancient stronghold, South Barur Mountain, the god Manannan yet dwells invisible to mortal eyes, and whenever on a warm day he throws off his magic mist blanket with which he is wont to cover the whole island, the golden gorse of purple heather blossoms become musical with the hum of bees, and sway gently in the breezes made balmy by the tropical warmth of an ocean stream flowing from the far distant Mexican shores of a new world. Then in many a moist and sweet-smelling glen, a pure and verdant land birds in rejoicing bands add to the harmony of sound, as they gather on the newly plowed field or dip themselves in the clear water of the tinkling brook. And from the cliffs and rocky islets of the coast comes the echo of the multitudinous chorus of seabirds at sunset on such a day. As evening calmness settles down, weird mountain shadows begin to move across the dimly lighted glens, and when darkness has fallen, there is a mystic stillness broken only by the ceaselessness throbbing of the sea waves, the flow of brooks, and the voices of the night. In the moorland solitudes, even by the day, there sometimes broods a deeper silence, which is yet more potent and full meaning for the peasant. And under its spell he beholds the peaceful vision, happy and sunlit, of sea and land, of gentle mountain falling away in land waves into well-lit plains and fertile valleys. And he comes to feel instinctively the old druidic fires relit within his heart. And perhaps unconsciously he worships there in nature's temple. The natural beauty without awakens the divine beauty within. And for a second of time he, out of his subconsciousness, is conscious in that nature there are beings and inaudible voices which have no existence. For the flippant pleasure-seeking crowds who come and go. To the multitude, his ancestral beliefs are foolishness. His fairies are but creatures of a fervid Celtic imagination, which readily responds to unusual phenomena and environments. They will not believe with him that all beauty and harmony in the world are but symbolic, and that behind these stand unseen sustaining forces and powers which are conscious and eternal, and though by instinct they willingly personify nature, they do not know the secret of why they do so. For them the outer is reality, and the inner non-existent. From the age of stone to the civilized era of today, the Isle of Man has been in succession the home of every known race and people who have flourished in Western Europe. And though subject in turn to the Irish Gael and to the Welsh Brython, to Northmen and to Danes, to Scots and to English, and the scene of sweeping transformations in religion, as pagan cults succeeded one another to give way to the teaching of St. Patrick and his disciples St. Germain, St. German, and Maulholm, and this finally to the Protestant form of Christianity. The island alone of the Celtic lands has been strangely empowered to maintain in almost primitive purity in its ancient constitution and freedom, and though geographically at the very center of the United Kingdom, is not a part of it. The archaeologists may still read in mysterious symbols of stone and earth as they lie strewn over the island's surface the history of this age-long panoramic procession of human evolution, while though these same symbols the Manx seer reads a deeper meaning, and sometimes in the superhuman realm of radiant light, to which since long ago they have oft come and oft returned. He meets face to face the gods and heroes whose early tombs stand solitary on the wind-swept mountaintop and moorland, or hidden away in the embrace of wildflowers and verdure amid valleys. And in the darker mid-world he sees innumerable ghosts of many of the races which have perished. Oof. Yeah. How does that sound, folks? Race is not tied to a land. We may have our ancestries, but that the land, the realm of the fairies, they are its own. They are tied to the land forever. Take heart in that as we move on to as we take on to Wales. Ahoy there, Wales. Why is it called Wales anyway? I suppose we'll find out. So in Wales, less can be said of Wales than of Ireland, or of Scotland as a whole. It has, it is true, its own peculiar psychic atmosphere, different no doubt, because its people are Brythonic Celts rather than the Gaelic Celts. But Wales, with conditions more modernized than is the case in Ireland or in the Western Hebrides of Scotland, does not exhibit a vigorous or flourishing state, those Celtic influences which, when they were active, did so much to create the precious romances of Arthur and his brotherhood, and to lay the foundations for the Welsh belief in a Tylwyth a fairy race which still surviving in a few favored localities. Wales, like all Celtic countries, is a land of long sea coasts, though there seems to be, save in the mountains of the north, less of mist and darkness and cloud effects than in Ireland and Scotland. In the south, perhaps, the most curious influences are to be felt at St. David's Head and in St. David's itself, once the goal for thousands of pilgrims from many countries of medieval Europe, and probably in pagan times the seat of an oracle. And a place of like character is the peninsula of Gower, south of Swansea. Caerphilly Castle, where the Green Lady reigns, is now, amid its ruined acres, is a strange place, and so is the hill near Carmarthen, where Merlin is asleep in a cave with the fairy woman Vivian. But in none of these places today is there a strong living faith in fairies as there is, for example, West Ireland, the one region where I found a real Celtic atmosphere, and it is a region where everybody speaks Welsh. It's a mountainous country, rarely visited by travelers save archaeologists, a few miles from Newport, and its center is the Pentre Evan Cromlech, the finest cromlech in Wales, if not in Britain. By this prehistoric monument and the country around the old Nevern Church 3 miles away, there is an active belief in the fairy folk, in ghosts, in death warnings, in death candles and phantom funerals, in witchcraft and black magic. Thence on to Newcastle, Emmeline, and its valley, there are many of the Mabingonian stories took form, or at least from where they drew rich material in the way of folklore. They drew rich material in the way of folklore. What do they have? A caption here? Caption 1. Drew rich material in the way of folklore. Caption: I am indebted for this information to the late Mr. Davies, the competent scholar and antiquarian of Newcastle, Emmeline, where for many years he has been vicar. Material in the way of folklore are environments purely Welsh and yet little disturbed by the commercial materialism of the age. There remain now to be mentioned 3 other places in Wales, to me very impressive psychically. These are ancient Harlech, so famous in recorded Welsh fairy romance, Harlech with its strange stone circles, an old castle from which Snowdon ranges seem to loom majestically and clear, and with its sun-kissed bay, Mount Snowdon, with its memories of Arthur and Welsh heroes, and sacred Anglesey or Mona, strewn with tumuli and dolmens and pillar stones. Mona, where the Druids made their last stand against the Roman eagles, and its little islands called Holyhead, facing Ireland. However, when all is said, modern Wales is poorer in its fairy atmosphere than modern England or modern Brittany. Certainly, there is a good deal of this fairy atmosphere, yet, though it has become less vital than the similar fairy atmosphere in the great centers of Erin and Imorica, but the purely social environment under which the fairy faith of Wales survives is a potent force which promises to preserve underneath the surface of Welsh national life, where the commercialism of the age has compelled it to retire in a state of temporary latency. The ancestral idealism of the ancient Brythonic race. In Wales, as in Lower Brittany, and in parts of Ireland and the Hebrides, one may still hear in common daily usage a language which has been continuously spoken since unknown centuries before the rise of the Roman Empire, and the stronghold for which the Druidic Eisteddfod, which in parentheses, an annual national congress of bards and literati, continues to have upon the Welsh people, in spite of their commercialism, is, again, a sign that their hearts remain uncorrupted, that when the more favorable hour strikes, they will sweep aside the deadening influences which now hold them in spiritual bondage, and become, as they were in the past, true children of Arthur. One can so hope, I suppose. Well, in Cornwall, strikingly like Brittany in physical aspects, southern and western Cornwall is a land of the sea, of rolling plains and moorlands, rather than high hills and mountains. Can you guys hear that? That freaking heater? My furnace? Let me come right back. Jesus Christ. How about that? We're gonna freeze out. Who needs a heater in the winter? We're supposed to be cold in the winter. Not warm in the winter. What kind of lunacy is that? Enjoy the cold. So now let's get back to it. How far did... Are you still with me? Okay. So we come to Cornwall. We never did hear why it was called Wales, did we? Welsh. It's from the Welsh word, the Welsh people. Well, anyways, so we come to Cornwall. It's strikingly like Brittany in physical aspects. Southern and western Cornwall is a land of the sea, of rolling plains and moorlands rather than of high hills and mountains. A land of golden yellow and furze bloom, where noisy crowds of black crows and white seagulls mingle together over the freshly turned or new sown fields, and where, in the springtime, the call of the cuckoo is heard with the song of the skylark. Like Isle of Man, from the earliest ages, Cornwall has been a meeting place and a battleground for contending races. The primitive dark Iberian peoples gave way before Aryan Celtic invaders, and these to Roman and then to Germanic invaders. Wow. primitive dark Iberian peoples. Okay. Nature has been kind to the whole of Cornwall, but chiefly upon the peninsula whose ancient capital is Penzance, which possibly means the Holy Headland, and upon the land immediately eastward and north of it, she has bestowed her rarest gifts, holding this territory embosomed in the pure waters of ocean, and breathing over it the pure air of the Atlantic in spring and in summer calm, when the warm vapors from the Gulf Stream sweep over it freely and make it a land of flowers and singing birds. Nature preserves eternally its beauty and sanctity. There are ruined British villages whose builders are long forgotten, strange prehistoric circular sun temples like fortresses crowning the hilltops, mysterious underground passageways and crosses probably pre-Christian. Everywhere the records of the mighty past of this thrice holy druid land of sunset. There are weird legends of the lost kingdom of fair Lyonesse, which seers sometimes see beneath the clear salt waves, which, all its ancient towns and flower fields, legends of Phoenicians and Oriental merchants who came for tin, legends of gods and of giants, of pixies and fairies, of King Arthur and his castle at Tintagel, of angels and saints, of witches and wizards. On Dinsul, quote, hill dedicated to the sun, unquote, pagan priests and priestesses kept kindled the eternal fire, which daily watched eastward for the rising of the god of light and life, to greet his coming with paeans of thanksgiving and praise. Then after the 6th century, the new religion had come proclaiming a more mystic light of the world in the Son of God. And to the pious half-pagan monks who succeeded the Druids of Archangel St. Michael, the Archangel St. Michael appeared in vision on the sacred mount. Ugh. Blah. And before St. Augustine came to Britain, the Celts of Cornwall had already combined in their own mystical way the spiritual message of primitive Christianity with the pure nature worship of their ancestors. How do you like that? Oh, there's a caption for the place where the half-pagan monks, where the Archangel St. Michael appeared on the sacred mount. There's a caption, in the Gnosis, St. Michael symbolizes the sun, and thus very appropriately at St. Michael's Mount, Cornwall, at Mount St. Michael Carnac, and also at Mount Michael on the coast of Normandy, replaced the great god of light and life, held in supreme honor among the ancient Celts. Suppose I should say that my middle name is Michael. How things change. And stay the same, I suppose. Well, no. It's interesting names anyways. Do you put any power into your name? Do you adopt it? I mean, it's what your parents gave to you. Damn right I do. So on this sacred mount, and before St. Augustine came to Britain, the Celts of Cornwall had already combined in their own mystical way the spiritual message of primitive Christianity with the pure nature worship of their ancestors. And their land was then, as it most likely had been in pagan days, a center of pilgrimages for their Celtic kinsmen from Ireland, from Wales, and from England, and from Brittany. When in later times new theological doctrines were superimposed on this mysticism of Celtic Christianity, the sacred fires were buried in ashes, and the light and beauty of the pagan world obscured with sackcloth. What a fucking shame. But there in that most southern and western corner of the Isle of Britain, the sacred fires themselves still burn on the divine hilltops, though smothered in the hearts of its children. The Cornishman's vision is no longer clear. He looks upon Cromlech and Dolmen, upon ancient caves of initiation, upon the graves of his prehistoric ancestors, and vaguely feels but does not know why his land is so holy, is so permeated by an indefinable magic, for he has lost his ancestral mystic touch with the unseen. He is, quote, educated, unquote, and, quote, civilized, unquote. The hand of the conqueror has fallen more heavily upon the people of Cornwall than upon any other Celtic people, and now for a time. But let us hope happily for this dark period of transition, they sleep until Arthur comes back to break the spell and set them free. Well now, we come to Brittany. In Brittany, as was pointed out at the beginning of this chapter, Ireland and Brittany are to be regarded as the two poles of the modern Celtic world. But it is believed by Celtic mystics that they are much more than this, that they are two of its psychic centers, with Tara and Karnak as two respective points of focus from which the Celtic influence of each country radiates. With such a psychical point of view, it makes no difference at all whether one scholar argues Karnak to be Celtic and another pre-Celtic. Or if pre-Celtic, as it most likely is, it has certainly been bequeathed to the people who were and are Celtic, and its influence has been an unbroken thing from times altogether beyond the horizon of history. There's a caption about Tara and Karnak. In this connection, we may think of the north and south magnetic poles of the Earth as centers of definite yet invisible forces which can be detected and to some extent measured scientifically. So it's talking about the two psychic centers, Tara and Karnak, which are the magnetic poles for the Celtic influence. Alright. Well now, Celtic has been unbroken in history. So according to this theory, parentheses, and in following it, we are merely trying to put on record unique material transmitted to us by the most learned of contemporary Celtic mystics and seers. End parentheses. There seem to be a certain favored places on the earth where its magnetic and even more subtle forces are most powerful and easily felt by persons susceptible to such things. As Karnak appears to be one of the greatest such places in Europe. And for this reason, as has been thought, was probably selected by its ancient priest builders as the great center for religious practices, for the celebration of pagan mysteries, for tribal assemblies, for astronomical observations, and very likely for establishing schools in which to educate neophytes for the priesthood. Tara, with its tributary Boyne Valley, is a similar place in Ireland, so selected and used, as in our study of the cult of fairies and the cult of the dead, manuscript evidence will later indicate, and thus to such psychical and magnetic, or, according to perhaps to others, religious and traditional influences as focus themselves at Tara and Karnak, though in other parts of the two countries as well, may be due in a great even and an essential measure to the vigorous and living fairy faith of Ireland, and the innate and ever-conscious belief of the Breton people in the legend of the dead and in a world invisible. For fairies and souls of the dead, though, strictly speaking, not confused, are believed to be beings of the subjective world existing today. The subjective world. And influencing mortals as they have always existed and influenced them according to ancient and modern traditions, and as they appear now in the eyes even of science through the work of a few pioneer scientists in psychical research. And it seems probable that subjective beings of this kind, granting their existence, were made use of by the ancient Druids, and even by Patrick when the old and new religions met to do battle on the hill of Tara. The control of Tara as a psychical center meant the psychical control of all Ireland. To a day, the hill of Tara, the statue of St. Patrick, dwarfs the Lyath stone beside it. At Karnak, the Christian cross overshadows Dolmens and Menhirs. A learned priest of the Roman Church told me, when I met him at Galway, that in his opinion those places in Ireland where ancient sacrifices were performed to pagan or Druid gods are still, unless they have been regularly exercised under the control of daemons. And what the Druids were at Tara and throughout Erin, and most probably at Karnak as well, the priests were in Egypt, and the Pythonesses in Greece. That is to say, Druids, Egyptian priestess, in charge of Greek oracles, are said to have foretold the future, interpreted omens, worked all miracles and wonders of magic by the aid of daemons. Daemons? How do you say that? It's not demons, it's daemons. Daemons who were regarded as an order of invisible beings, intermediary between gods and men, and as sometimes including the shades of Hades. I should say, but as before, if he who knowing Ireland, the land of Faerie, would know in the same manner Brittany, the land of the dead, let him silently and alone walk many times in the sun, in wind, in storm, in thick mist, through the long, broad avenues of stone of the alignments at Karnak. Let him watch from among them the course of the sun from east to west. Let him stand on St. Michael's Mount on the day of the winter solstice, or on the day of the summer solstice. Let him enter the silence of its ancient underground chamber, so dark and so mysterious. Let him sit for hours musing amid coronachs and dolmens, and beside menhirs and holy wells. Let him marvel at the mightiest of menhirs, now broken and prostrate, at Loch Mariaquir, and then let him ponder over the subterranean places near it. Let him try to read the symbolic inscriptions on the rocks at Gavrinis. Let him stand on the Isle de Seine at sunrise and at sunset. Let him penetrate the solitudes of the forest at Broceliande and walk through the Val Sans Retour, in parentheses, the veil without return. And then let him wander in footpaths with the Breton peasant through fields where good dames sit on the sunny side of a bush or wall, knitting stockings, where there are long hedges of furze, golden yellow with bloom, even in January, and listen to the stories about Corrigans, about the dead who mingle here with the living. Let him enter the peasant's cottage when there is fog over the land and the sea winds are blowing across the shifting sand dunes, and hear what he can tell him. Let him, even as he enjoys the picturesque customs and dress of the Breton folk, and looks upon their joyous ronde, in parentheses, perhaps the relic of a long-forgotten sun dance, looks on their joyous ronde, observe the depth of their nature, their almost ever-present sense of the seriousness of human life and effort, their beautiful characters, as their mystic land has shaped them without the artificiality of books and schools, their dreaminess as they look out across the ocean, their often perfect physique and fine profiles and rosy cheeks, and yet with all their brooding, innate melancholy. And let him know that there is with them always an overshadowing consciousness of an invisible world, not in some distant realm of space, but here and now, blending itself with this world, its inhabitants, their dead ancestors and friends, mingling with them daily, and awaiting the hour when the Enkel, a king of the dead, shall call each to join their invisible company. Well, there you have it. Chapter 1, Section 1. I think I'm going to take a break for now there, folks. Until next time, it's Dispatcher signing out.